everyone, and a massively warm welcome to Churchcentral South for this morning. It's great to have you with us. I want to say a particularly warm welcome today to those people watching who are in Kids Central or Tot Central. If that's you, I am talking to you from your screen, and I want you to put your hand up really high in the air so that I can see you, so that I know that you're listening. You know that I can't see you, it's a video. But it's great to have you here, and it's great to be able to speak directly to you for a moment. I want to tell you that as a church family, we really miss gathering together with you. I miss going into the place where we used to do church, the school hall, and bumping into you and seeing you legging it around by the stage and hearing what's been going on in your life and hearing quite a lot of noise from you. I miss all of that stuff so much. And I just wanted to this morning give a particular mention to you and say that you've been so courageous in all of the changes of this strange time because of coronavirus. And as a church, we're really proud of you. We love you. And we love the fact that so many of you have been gathering on the Zoom kids room after the meeting as well. And just to say, I'm going to be there with my little ones this week. Again, we've loved that time. And I'd love to be able to say hello to you there. So if you're in Kids Central or Tot Central, we miss you, we love you, and we hope you enjoy the service. And I can't wait to have some fun with you on the Zoom call after as well. Also, I suppose it would be fair to say hello to the grown-ups as well, but we do that every week. So hey everybody else too. This morning we have loads of different features lined up to help us all connect with God wherever we are. Some of those will be really familiar. We'll have a talk, as we often would, from the Sermon on the Mount series. We've got some different features though that are going to be slightly different. We're going to have an immersive experience in one of the ministries that our church runs. Just going to tip you off about that in case you're like me, prone to fear change and find it unsettling. There's going to be something a little bit different, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. For now, though, what we're going to do is lift our eyes to God. And we're going to do that in a few ways. Firstly, Rob is going to give us our next 60-second sermon, and he's going to be sharing some of the things that God's been speaking to him. And I think it's going to resonate with loads of us this morning. And straight after that, we're going to go into a time of worship where Tim is going to lead us in speaking some words together. Wayan and Wayc will lead us in singing some songs together and hearing some words from the Bible. And various people are going to be popping up to pray and lead us in prayer as well. So over to Rob to begin our eyes lifting up to God in worship.
Hi, my name's Rob, and this is what God's been teaching me over the last 8 months. I like to read up on the news, learn about what's going on, and come up with a thought-through opinion on things. So when the pandemic happened, I naturally started doing this. But when there was so much information, and even the most expert of experts disagreed, I quickly became overwhelmed and burdened by it all. It felt like I was drowning in thoughts of what might happen, what could happen, and what should happen. Thankfully, at this point, God spoke to me through his word, and he's kept doing so ever since. It says, "He causes wars to end throughout the earth. He breaks the bow and snaps the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honoured by every nation. I will be honoured throughout the world." Phew. It's good to be informed, but it's also good to know that I don't have to work out all the answers. I'm not in control of the fate of humankind. And it's even better to know that I can rest, be still, and trust in the one that is and who cares deeply for every person.
As we come to worship now, let's use some words that Christians have spoken together over the centuries to remind them of the glorious truth that we all hold together. So let's repeat together. We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is, seen and unseen. We believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the only Son of God, eternally begotten of the Father, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, of one being with the Father. Through him all things were made. For us and for our salvation he came down from heaven, By the power of the Holy Spirit, he became incarnate from the Virgin Mary and was made man. For our sake, he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. He suffered death and was buried. On the third day, he rose again in accordance with the Scriptures. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead, and his kingdom will have no end. We believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father and the Son. With the Father and the Son he is worshipped and glorified. He has spoken through the prophets. We believe in one holy, universal and apostolic church. We acknowledge one baptism for the forgiveness of sins. We look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen.
Let's sing Beholding Your Beauty. Beholding your beauty is all that we long for. To worship you, Jesus, is our soul's desire. For these very hearts you have shaped for your pleasure, purpose to lift your name high. You
Praise be to you, O Lord, God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendour. For everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, O Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honour come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and give strength to all. Now, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name.
Tujulikaneni tate tuli meulu na jina lena liapulwe uamba wena uye yalolona longo mbada tungasha ilongwa meulu ongome wetu wa mafikwa eshe tupao nena tukufila pa matimba ya tungasha tukufila pa natimba nashe notula wa malo konta kufamui shishu wambo oe nifimano oloe alushefi alushe. Amen.
You are beautiful beyond description, too marvelous for words, too wonderful for comprehension, like nothing ever seen or heard. Who can grasp your infinite wisdom? Who can fathom the depths of your love? You are beautiful beyond description, majesty enthroned above, and I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Holy God, to whom all praise is due, I stand in awe of you. You are beautiful beyond description, yet God crushed you for my sin. In agony and deep affliction, cut off that I might enter in. Who can grasp such tender compassion? Who can fathom this mercy so free? You are beautiful beyond description, Lamb of God who died for me. And I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Holy God, to whom all praise is due, I stand in awe of you. And I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Holy God, to whom all praise is due, I stand in awe of you.
Father God, we do stand in awe of you. We stand completely amazed that we can be in your presence, that you can change us and you can shape us to make us look like you. You can sort out the mess of our lives. You can know and understand the chaos and the complexities of just the communities we're in, where we belong, things we don't understand at all, Lord. And let us enjoy being unable to fathom you. Let us enjoy being completely in awe of you and not understanding anything, Lord, and just resting in the fact that you are all-knowing and all-loving and all-powerful, Lord.
Yeah, you are beautiful, Lord. You are wonderful. You are marvelous. What can I do but stand in awe of you? What can I do but praise you and adore you for who you are, for what you've done? Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your protection. Thank you for your provision. Thank you that you are the King of kings, the Lord of lords, that you are Prince of peace. Thank you that you are sovereign, that you rule. I stand in awe and I stand in amazement at who you are, at what you've done, at who I am because of you. And yeah, you are worthy of all praise.
Jonathan's going to be here in a little while bringing us our next Sermon on the Mount talk. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Johnny, who's got an extended interview and also will lead us into this immersive experience that I tipped you off about at the start. So sit back and enjoy.
As a church, we want our existence to be for the good of our city, Birmingham. And there are lots of ways to do that we often think of, maybe helping the marginalised, helping addicts or those trapped in poverty, and those are all fantastic things. But one of the ways we can bless our city that often isn't thought about or considered much is through the arts. Art is a gift from God to us that enriches and enhances the human experience. And where a culture's art thrives and is vibrant and engaging, well, you know what, people tend to thrive too. And we want people to thrive in our city and further afield as well. That's how one of the ways we can show love to them, as Jesus wanted us to do. So as a recognition of all this, years ago, probably about 10 years ago, actually, out of Churchcentral, we started a network of artists, of Christian artists, which has grown from Churchcentral to our family of churches, Catalyst, and now is even working beyond that. And I am delighted today to have on our Zoom interview the team that makes up Sputnik HQ, the throbbing heart of Sputnik, myself and Chris and Wimmy Donald. Hi guys, great to see you. It's fantastic, good to see you. Well, under normal circumstances, on a Wednesday morning, we would all be in Central House. We would be in Sputnik office, which many of you will have seen. We would be concocting and facilitating secret plans and clever tricks of how to encourage and support Christian artists across the country. It's not exactly normal circumstances at the moment. So we wanted to give you a glimpse into what Sputnik's been up to for the last 8 months or so. So I'm going to kick off with Chris. Chris, right early on in the first lockdown, we started finding a way to fund artists, Christian artists at this time. Can you talk us through a little bit of that?
Yeah, so obviously, as most people probably know, the pandemic's been a pretty harsh time for lots of people working in the creative arts, which can be quite a precarious place to work at the best of times. But we know lots of people in the Sputnik network, as well as friends and family, who very quickly lost their primary source of income in the first lockdown, and in many cases their sort of second and third backup forms of income as well, and they often also could they had a tendency to fall through the cracks of the government schemes for one reason or another. So there was a lot of chaos in the early days, and certainly a lot of worry for people. And so we set up the Emergency Artists Fund, which has invited people to donate money so that we could then give out small gifts to artists who'd been particularly hit by the pandemic and the lockdown and weren't sure what they were going to be able to do. And so we raised a little over £6,000, which is great. I mean, especially considering that it was a difficult time for lots of people. And we've now given most of that away in small gifts to people. And I think the really precious thing about it is that artists, it is a cliche, but artists are often kind of undervalued, underappreciated, misunderstood, outside and inside of the church. And to be able to give gifts to people in this way was a way to really show that we valued them, that we're saying, we value what you do. Please don't retrain to become a technician. We think this is an important sphere of our common life for you to be involved in.
As well as funding Christian artists and projects, we want to connect Christian artists to like minds and also help them think through the interaction of their art practice and their faith. Wumi, how have our Sputnik meetups changed over the last 8 months?
So on the onset of the lockdown, we were thinking about what we could offer people in the network, especially seeing as we couldn't meet up in person anymore. We came up with industry notes. It's a series of events where that focuses on a particular art discipline, where we invite 3 kind of established or accomplished artists with a particular design field or art field, where they can discuss process, discuss their work, and discuss their faith.
Fantastic. Well, we didn't just want to get artists connecting together, though. We also wanted to keep them creating work and maybe even give some simple platforms where platforms have been taken away. Chris, could you talk us through the In the Rough project that we started early on?
In the Rough is an ongoing online exhibition of film, music, writing, dance, anything that can be shared in a browser. And we just made this a totally open submission exhibition. So asked people to share what they were working on initially in the lockdown and then just in the ongoing pandemic. So there's been obviously a big range of stuff, whether unfinished sketches or very accomplished pieces of art in some cases. And I think my favorite part of it had to be the Birmingham folk artist David Blower, who's a good friend of ours, released an EP called the Apocalyptic Lockdown Blues, which is a great name to begin with. And then maybe a month later, somebody else in the network who I've never met posted a video that they'd choreographed and performed and filmed a dance of themselves in their kitchen to one of the songs from that EP. And it just felt like one of the things you can't make that up, and you can't put a price on that kind of that feeling of collaboration and mutual encouragement within the network. That's just been really, really precious.
I've done a little deal with Rich. We've got a little bit longer for our interview than we normally would have. So we can show you some of the art being created in the network. And I think we might even have time to sneak in that dance over one of Dave Blower's songs that Chris just mentioned. But thanks so much, Chris and Wumi. We're going to leave you with some art. Please sit back and enjoy.
This year has gone exactly how I didn't want. This year has brought more tears than happy thoughts, happy thoughts. My mind is numb, exactly what I didn't want. This year's been dumb, more tears than happy thoughts, happy thoughts. So tell me now, just tell me what I'm supposed to do. Oh, what the hell? Nobody's got a clue, I just wanna feel safe. I just wanna have cash when the bills are due. I just wanna feel brave. Nobody's got a clue, Nobody's got a clue,
It's that reverence for the rare, for the classic, for the detail, semblance of a snare, attacking on a sweet scale. It's that reverence for the rare, for the classic, for the detail, semblance of a snare, attacking on a sweet scale. The expression of my inner introspection will hold the mirrors to the world, describing the reflection. My section believes in the resurrection, so it should come as no surprise. Heaven bound is the direction.
Heard that song like a distant lullaby calling me to lay down my life. Yes, I heard that song like a distant lullaby calling me to lay it all down, lay it all down, lay it all down.
An ocean away, sinking in thoughts just as deep, I reflect on all the ways I took you for granted. I miss the simple things, like seeing the splendor of stars shining in a night sky as dark and as beautiful as the people. Blessed to be born underneath it. I miss the sun, the way it poured, pure and plentiful on my chocolate brown, bathing it in a mystical golden light, heart and healing. It sang in my bloodstream so I could literally feel the music of its power surging within my bones. Unlike in my daydreams on this rain-soaked island, I miss her, my Africa.
Everyone adores the sun from your windows. Listen to the hum of all things and be still. Everyone adores the sun from your rooms. Feel the longing reach of all things.
Looking at the world today, I'm feeling sick. From a closer pick, the world is running mad. Opposite us, stickers rock. Struggle stuff better, always is it enough? They need to give us more pain to be satisfied. Prison cuffs to my mind and my soul. But can they do that? Don't know. The government just want the worst. Satan's in control, let's get to the facts. You twisted your mind, that's what when a bomb drops, you were relaxed. But imagine the pain and suffering down in Iraq. Or when yourself would just spit by yourself. If not, then get down on your knees and then pray about something else. Imagine if your kid was dying or struggling and we're surviving. And there's nothing you can do but keep crying to the most highest. Would you want a helping hand? If not, then you are biased. Just be careful who you follow for the ghost might not be the...
Thank you, Johnny and Chris and Wumi, for that. It's wonderful to get an insight into Sputnik. I love being part of a church that has such a breadth of things that it's involved with. I'm not hugely connected to every individual thing that goes on, and you might feel that as well. But together, we are more than the sum of our parts, and we're involved in all these different things that God's doing through our church, whether it's the Sputnik stuff, whether it's the stuff with older people we heard about last week, whether it's our East plant into the east part of our city, whether it's the 25 new people who've connected in over the last few weeks through our wellbeing course. God is at work in and through our church, and I love being part of it with you guys. Just a couple of things to flag up before Jonathan comes to speak to us. Firstly, if you want to give financially to that vision, to be serving God in all those different ways, then you can head over to our website, churchcentral.org.uk/give, and you can find all the information there. Also going to let you know about not one, but two upcoming resources. On the 1st of December, to quickly flag up, there's going to be a brand new Advent podcast series going out with 24 short, punchy episodes to help your devotion to Jesus in the season of Advent. You're going to hear more about that in the coming days, but just to tip you off that that's coming up. But if you feel you cannot wait until the 1st of December for a podcast resource, I have good news for you, because starting tomorrow, we're releasing 5 daily episodes in a mini-series called Conversations About Race. This is a conversation that Jonathan had back in Black History Month with Pastor Calvin Young, another key leader in our city. And we've put it into some short, accessible episodes on a whole load of different themes so that together as a church, we can explore and take steps forward in the whole area of race, racism, and the church. We want to think biblically about those themes, and we want to grow and take steps forward as a church. And so I want to encourage you, whoever you are, to check out this resource. Some of you will have thought a lot about this issue, and I think there's going to be some new insights and new questions that these episodes raise. So I want to ask you to engage. But perhaps if you're someone who's not thought loads about this issue or who's aware of it, but it hasn't become something that you've gone into in any depth, I really want to flag it up for you and ask you as one of your elders if you would take the time to engage with us on this theme. We've made it as accessible as we possibly can. So whether you want to watch it on Facebook, listen to it on the app, watch it on the website, listen to it on Spotify, watch it on YouTube, we look up into the sky and see it plastered on the heavens. We've put it everywhere that we can because we really want all of us to check it out. So would you do that for me? Would you take the time tomorrow and through to Friday to, whether it's on a walk to school or whether it's in your daily walk to the park or going around Aldi, to take the time to think with us about these themes? For now, I'm going to hand over to Hope Meller, who's going to read our Bible passage for today, and then Jonathan will speak to us.
Today's Bible passage is Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 to 23. Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. You can identify them by their fruit, that is, by the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down and thrown into the fire. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, so you can identify people by their actions. Not everyone who calls out to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who actually do the will of my Father in heaven will enter. On Judgment Day, many of you will say to me, Lord, Lord, we are prophesied in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and perform many miracles in your name. But I will reply, I never knew you. Get away from me, you who break God's laws.
After 8 months of slowly working our way through Jesus' famous Sermon on the Mount, we are finally nearing the end. And don't know about you, but I find it pretty interesting how Jesus chooses to conclude his teaching. He doesn't finish with an inspiring story or a clever acronym or 3 points of application. No, he closes out the sermon with 3 warnings. Last time, if you remember, we looked at Jesus' warning about the 2 roads or the 2 paths that you can choose to follow in life. One is the broad way that just a ton of people are on, and it's basically live however you want. And the other is a very narrow way. It's a very specific way to be human, really based on Jesus' teachings that he's been unpacking for us throughout the Sermon on the Mount. And the warning is that these paths lead to very different destinations. One leads to life, the other leads to destruction. Next time, we'll look at Jesus' warning about the foundations we're building our lives on. As we're going to see, Jesus contrasts those who build their lives on his teaching with those who don't. And let's just say, the consequences for those who ignore his teaching, well, they're pretty catastrophic. But what we're going to be looking at today is a warning to be on our guard against false prophets. And so in verse 15 here in Matthew 7, Jesus says, beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. Just so you know, a prophet is basically a guide who helps you and I navigate the journey of life. A true prophet gives us, if you like, a map to help us find the way to human flourishing, the way to live in the kingdom of God, or what Jesus called the life that is truly life. That's a true prophet. But a false prophet points us down the wrong path. And before we know it, a decade or 2 goes by and we end up at the wrong destination. And for Jesus, the danger is that false prophets aren't quite as easy to spot as perhaps we assume. They often look like harmless sheep. They appear very innocent, but they're actually vicious wolves. That they're dangerous predators who are out to devour us. Which raises the question, how then do you spot a true prophet from a false one? Well, Jesus, in this passage, gives us 3 very simple tests. First one is the life test. Take a look at verse 16. Jesus says you can identify them by their fruit. That is, by the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Well, the answer is no. A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down and thrown into the fire. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, so you can identify people by their actions. Just to explain, fruit here is like a metaphor for what comes out of your life. It's another term for character. It's pretty simple. Healthy vines produce grapes, fig trees produce figs, and thorns and thistles produce thorns and thistles. So take a close look at the fruit or the character of the people you're looking to for guidance. And then ask yourself this: is it good or is it bad? Which is great in theory. The problem is, Jesus doesn't actually define good here. And so, it'd be very easy for us to import our own opinion of what's good and bad into the text. After all, the very first temptation to face humanity way back at the beginning of the story in Genesis 3, if you remember, is to redefine good and evil based on your own desires and the voice in the back of your head personified by the serpent in that story, rather than to defer and put your trust in God and what he has said to be good and true, and what is evil and bad. Really, that right there is the temptation beneath all the other temptations, to redefine good and evil based on a combination of your own desires and the voice you hear in the back of your head, rather than to trust God and what he has said to be true. Now, I think a big part of the problem here is that in our culture, we would tend to define good, wouldn't we, as loving, which for the most part we take to mean nice and tolerant and what makes people happy. And if we then impose that view on what Jesus says here, we can kind of shrug it all off and say, well, it doesn't really matter what they say. It doesn't matter whether it fits with the teaching of the Bible. I mean, they're a good person, they're nice, they're tolerant, they want people to be happy. What's the big deal? And I would suggest that is one of the main reasons why our society is in such crisis right now. We no longer have an anchor point for what is good or evil. It's like there's this mob mentality. Everyone's presenting different versions of what's good and evil and then attacking people who dare to question them. Listen, we desperately need an anchor point. And just to be clear, that anchor point is Jesus himself. We need to submit our understanding of what's good and bad to his teachings as laid out by Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, the gospel writers, and then interpreted by the writers of the rest of the New Testament. Which then leads us to test number 2. How do you spot a true prophet from a false one? Well, secondly, Jesus introduces us to the obedience test. Verse 21, not everyone who calls out to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who actually do the will of my Father in heaven will enter. I love the Message paraphrase of this verse. It says, knowing the correct password, saying, Master, Master, for instance, isn't going to get you anywhere with me. What is required is serious obedience, doing what my Father wills. Now for Matthew, who wrote this gospel, Jesus' teaching is the will of the Father. And the will of the Father is Jesus' teaching. In the words of Jesus, those who have seen me have seen the Father. I and the Father are one. In other words, Jesus claimed, didn't he, to speak on behalf of God himself, that they are one and the same. So for Jesus, the life test isn't enough. It is not enough for someone to simply be a good person. You need to look really closely at the content of what they're teaching. Can't help thinking of Paul's instruction to his young protege Timothy. He said, keep a close watch on how you live and on your teaching. Stay true to what is right for the sake of your own salvation and the salvation of those who hear you. Really, it's this same idea of how you live and what you teach being vitally important, because notice what's at stake here. Your salvation and the salvation of others. And so a great question to ask when you're maybe listening to a podcast or reading a blog or a book or an article or listening to a lecture or something on the radio or watching a documentary, or you're simply just scrolling through your social media feed, a great question to ask is this person's teaching moving my heart to obey Jesus' teachings? Do they make me want to do the will of the Father? Or do they make me doubt or play fast and loose with interpretation, or simply explain things away in order to justify me doing what in my heart of hearts really I want to do? I tell you, this is where we have to be so rooted in the teachings of the whole Bible. If you like, we need to be like the Bereans in Acts 17, who were told, receive the message with great eagerness and examine the scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. Now let's face it, if that was necessary for the teaching of the Apostle Paul, how much more so for the rest of us? And so, in case you're wondering, just to be clear, you have to test everything that I say, because, shock horror, there'll be things that I teach that are wrong. Hopefully not heretically wrong, but maybe just not the right balance, or not what the original author intended, or not well explained, or inappropriately applied. Problem is, I don't know which bits are wrong. It's not as though I'm sitting there kind of writing my sermons thinking, okay, where shall I drop in the heresy part this time? Before God, I'm doing my best here, but I'm a human being with a mind that is fallen and lacks wisdom at times. And so you've got to test everything I say. In fact, everything everybody has to say. I hasten to add, not against what you think, not against what our culture thinks, but against the litmus test that is Scripture. Listen, we have to be so immersed in what the Bible says that when somebody is just a little off, we can spot it a mile off. Which, you don't need me to tell you, is easier said than done. You see, we can easily get confused because false prophets tend to use Christian-y language. Lord, Lord sounds very spiritual, but it doesn't guarantee that the person is being true to the Lord's teaching. In preparation for this talk, I was particularly struck by this paragraph from Rosaria Butterfield, where she refers to those who reinvent Christianity to avoid the disgrace and shame of the cross for a respectable religion that bows to the idols of our day, consumerism and sexual autonomy. This manipulation strategy relies on using biblical words in anti-biblical ways. It shares with biblical Christianity the same vocabulary, but not the same dictionary. In short, Jesus and Rosaria Butterfield are warning us not to be naive, not to embrace just what our ears want to hear, and not to be duped by people using Christianly language to undermine the very clear teachings of Christianity. So, test number 1 is the life test. Test number 2, the teaching test. And then test number 3, Jesus emphasizes the importance of the relationship test. Verse 22, he says, "On judgment day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name, we cast out demons in your name and performed many miracles in your name.' But I'll reply, 'I never knew you. Get away from me, you who break God's laws.'" Now, just to say, Jesus isn't here primarily teaching about our salvation. Now, his chief concern is the false prophets who claim to be his followers, who claim to speak on his behalf, but aren't actually in relationship with him. Now, don't miss this. For Jesus, a good life and good teaching, important though they are not enough. Now, he sets the bar even higher. The ultimate test is one of genuine relationship with Jesus. Do they know Jesus? And by know, Jesus isn't talking just about head knowledge. He's getting at relational knowledge. He's talking about intimacy. He's talking about genuine friendship. And so, if you're just a bit concerned about Jesus is saying here, and you're perhaps a little fearful that you could be excluded on Judgment Day, the best way to respond is to dig deeper into your relationship with Jesus. And so, I'd simply appeal to you to pursue greater intimacy, deeper friendship with him. And not out of fear, but out of delight. And all that being said, I think the tricky thing about this third test is that we can't actually test for it. We can guess, we can pray, we can discern whether other people have a genuine relationship with Jesus, but ultimately at the end of the day, we just don't know this side of Judgment Day. And so we have a responsibility to watch out. We are to beware. We're definitely to be on our guard, but ultimately it's not our place to judge. That role is reserved solely for Jesus. Just to add, it's interesting that Jesus doesn't actually tell us what to do with the false prophets, other than to simply watch out for them, which I'd suggest requires a degree of maturity, because I don't think Jesus is wanting to create a community of self-appointed watchdogs. I don't think he's looking for us to foster a spirit of suspicion or cynicism where every spiritual leader or every preacher is guilty until proven innocent. But we are to remain watchful and alert. And to that end, Jesus is wanting us to be rooted in Scripture. He's calling us to be obedient to what Scripture teaches, a people who aren't easily duped. And so, as I draw to a close, why don't you just dream with me for a few moments? Just imagine what it would be like if we as a community made it our goal to be true prophets, pointing to the good life that Jesus alone offers. What if we were to devote our lives to obeying the teachings of Jesus, to doing the Father's will, not simply our own will, Not just following our desires wherever they take us, but doing the Father's will. And what if out of that we were to bear fruit? Men, women, children, transformed out of relationship to become the true prophets that our city so desperately needs. And what if we weren't just on our guard for false prophets, but we were actively seeking to be true prophets to our family, to our friends, to our neighbours, to our classmates, our colleagues at work? In a city that has lost its bearings, that has no anchor point, what if we were truth tellers, producers of good fruit, living in the reality of Jesus, anchored in him and pointing others to him? For what it's worth, I think that is the kind of community that God is calling us to be.
We are nearly done. All that remains for me to do is warmly invite you to join in with our online coffee time. Lots of you will have been doing this and will know the drill, but in case you haven't, let me just quickly flag up what you do. If you head to our website, churchcentral.org.uk/south, and you scroll down, you'll find a link to one of 4 different Zoom rooms. There's a room for you if you're new to the church where you can connect in with one of the leaders, ask a few questions, perhaps find out a little bit more about Church Central South. There's a room for students and 20s, there's a room for kids, or there's a general catch-up where, ladies and gentlemen, there's a brand new feature where you can be in a breakout room and then decide that you would quite like to mingle into another group of people, and you can leave the breakout room and go and check out another breakout room and have a little chat with them. It's almost like real life where you could choose where you wandered in a room. The internet is a wonderful thing, so do come and check it out. We've got our prayer meeting this evening, 7:30. You can jump on there if you'd like to. And a reminder as well for that Conversations About Race, episode 1, released in the morning. Do check it out. Have a great Sunday. Have a great week. See you soon.